Welcome to the Army Empire Podcast, your go-to podcast for insightful tips on investment strategies, entrepreneurship, and all things money matters. Join Bernard Alerte, your guide on this journey to financial freedom. Each episode will dive into expert advice, practical strategies, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your financial future. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned investor, we've got something for everyone. So get ready to unlock your financial potential and make your money work for you. And now, let's welcome your host, Bernard Alerte.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. Hey, Liz. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Excited to be here.
You ready for another episode?
We're ready. Episode 24.
Yeah, this is amazing. Almost 25 episodes already.
Absolutely.
Listen, you're going to be celebrating at some point episode 50, episode 75, 100.
Yes.
We were just
Absolutely.
talking backstage before we jumped on the live how Bernard is able to go back and tell people, hey, you have a question about this? Go back to episode so-and-so. And isn't that great to be able to go back to stuff like that?
Absolutely. It's sort of, that's why we wanted to have a great reference point so people can go. Sometimes when you hear something the first time, I'm like that. I may not get everything the first time, but when I go back and see it over and over again, or maybe I come across a scenario like, oh my gosh, I remember that was talked about. And you can always go back and reference the episode, and which is exactly why we wanted to do it, for it to be a resource for everyone and anything that they do as much as possible.
Yeah, it's definitely a great tool to have.
Yes, absolutely.
Go back to the toolbox and grab that stuff. Yeah, I like this. I think this is Eileen. She's saying it's like we're creating a library.
Yes.
A library of all these amazing topics. I loved our episode last week. I thought that was super fun.
Yes, it was good. It was cool.
How we were able to banter back and forth with what we've learned throughout all these episodes. And today we have another great topic. So tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, we wanted to talk about college savings. We were going to do Eileen and I, my wife Eileen, we were going to do one on people are asking about their kids. How do I need to get my young adult to see things different about money. And so we had something set up that we were going to talk about, how money works, a parental guide for kids, how to deal with money the right way. It's never too early to have these conversations with money. Because one of the things we come across so many times is I've had over the 27 years, we had families we helped at 18, 19, 20, all the way up to 75 and 80. And one of the things, as people get older, one thing we get so many times, listen, I wish I had known this. Someone taught me about this when I was 20, 18, 20, 25. It's so different. So we wanted to give like parents a good reference guide to what they need to do for themselves, for that they have young kids, to get them thinking the right way when it comes to money.
All right. So grab your pen, grab your paper, because we're about to learn the ABCs, the alphabets, the ABCs of education in savings.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to talk more about college. How do you save for kids' college education? One of the biggest costs out there is kids' education. Is college has been one of the biggest costs out there that parents have, even kids have. So many kids right now going out of college, and they may get a job yet, and they're starting with $100,000, $50,000, $100,000 in debt because so much. Because I remember back in the days, the caveman days. I remember like I went to college. It was in 1988. Went to 91. Right. I went to college, and I went to check the St. John's University, which was in Queens, New York, which is a pretty good school, right? And back then, you know how much the tuition was back then, 1980 and 1990, right? It was $3,200 a year, a semester.
A semester, yeah,
$3,200 a semester, which was about $6,000 a year.
Correct.
Right. Back then, I think Harvard or Ivy League school was about maybe $10,000 a semester. $10,000 a semester, $20,000 a year. And you fast forward now, 30, 40 years later, 30, 35, 40 years later, St. John's, I think, is like 60, 70 grand a year.
Crazy.
Right. And because think about it, the the cost of college has gone up dramatically, but the incomes have not gone up with the cost of college. So it's becoming a really big challenge, right? So this is some of the costs of right now education, tuition, room and board, book supplies. Just a vocational school is about $10,000, $10,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
Vocational school, a public 2 year, right? Like if you again just an associate, right? You're paying about 20, average about 20,000, right? Public 4 year, right? And on campus is about 30,000, right? Public 4 year out of state is almost you see 40, or close to 50,000. And private 4 year college is about $60,000 a year. So the cost is just tremendous. So if you add 3-4 years average to get an education of 4 year, you're paying about 240, 250,000
Crazy.
to get into that. So it's so important to start early, right? So if you look at the next slide, and it keeps going up, right? For example, in 2020, the average college, right? If you think a tuition cost may grow faster than your student. So the projected 18 years old, right, is about $219,000. To 219,000 right now. So if you look at 18 years from now, 2038, the same cost will be 484,000.
That's crazy.
Understand? Listen, my parents bought a house in years 19, I think 70, 70, 71, and they paid like 50,000, 40,000 for that house, right? And this is just college, just education. And the sample, sometimes you're not even guaranteed to get out of school, right?
I like what Robert's saying there.
For a son's education. So it's going up so much, and that is something that people have to pay attention of. People have to really pay attention. So if you look at the next slide, what it talks about, pretty much you have to build a plan. It requires building a plan. It requires really taking the time and have careful planning. May help your savings grow. Like it talks about 52% of Americans family say they have a plan to save for education, right? Versus 80% plan versus 31% non-planners. And it says families that plan for education savings borrow significantly less than non-planners, right? And it's so, and I'll tell you, and I'll talk about it in a couple of slides. I give you a perfect example. My brother, I remember when I first started the business, we set up a college fund for my niece, right? And she was like 2 years old at that time, and he was putting away, I think, $200-$250 a month in a college fund, right? Putting away for college, right? And you fast forward that education. She graduated 18, 19. She actually got accepted to Cornell University, where she went to pre-med, which is a Ivy League school, right? And she had a little bit of scholarships, but she was able to pay a big portion, right, of that, because that $200 a month grew to about, oh my gosh, like almost 150,000, right? Wow. Over that period of time, invested in the right places. So if you fast forward, she actually went to college. She was able to pay most of the school on top of that and come out with zero debt. Versus a lot of her friends had to take student loans out, right? And end up 100, 200,000 in debt. Sometimes doctors are like 50, 60, 70 years old, and that's when they're done paying off with their debt, which is so important. So that's so crucial. So you have to carefully plan. If you have young kids, you have to carefully plan for that, which is so important.
So good. Yes.
So let's take a look at the next slide. What are different options, savings plans out there? Different options. I give you tax treatments out there that someone can put aside for education, right?
Yes. Tell us about that.
Right. For some of these options work better than others, right? We're gonna explain each of them so people are very clear. Number one is everybody heard the 529 plan, right? 529 plan is one of the things that you can actually put aside for kids, specific for kids' education. And there's traditional IRA pre-tax, right? You can actually, people don't realize that you can use your IRA for kids' education, your own personal IRA, and help for the kids' education. There's some benefits to that. And Roth IRA is also after tax. And something called UGMA. UGMA is called Uniform Gifts to Minor Act, right? And UTMA is Uniform Transfer Minor Act, right? And also Coverdale, which is a savings account, which is also for college. So we're going to talk about each of them a little bit and very quick and tell you some of the benefits of them and go from there, right? So if you look at the first one, a 529 plan, which most people are aware of, which I think is the best one for kids' education. Or if you look at the next slide, right? It talks about different options, tax treatment. 529 plan, tax application. The good thing about 529 plan, your money can grow tax-free growth, right? So the interest you're earning, so if you invest the money every single month for your kids, right, the money can grow tax deferred, right? That means the interest you earn the money, you pay zero taxes on it, and it's also tax-free withdrawals as long as they are used for qualified education expenses, right? As
Okay.
long as they're used for, yes.
So that's the key, that as long as it qualifies for the education, you're
Education.
good and you're going to get the tax-free and all that good stuff.
Exactly. As long as for room, board, books, computers, device, anything that relate to the actual school, actually that's tax-free, is tax-free, right? And it's owner-driven account. What the good thing about that is if a parent sets it up for a child, so parent owns the account. Okay. So the parent is the owner and the child is called the beneficiary of the account. Okay. That's a good thing about that. And also, one of the things that people are concerned with, let's say some people, they want to be able to get financial aid impact, right? It tells you financial aid impact because people want to get financial aid because sometimes when someone applies for financial aid, they look at how much money it is on the child's name or the parent's name, okay? And they determine how much to give that person, right? Which is will be another podcast to talk about that. We can't go deep, but it only counts for 5.6%, especially if the parents apply like co-signing for a student loan for their kid. They look at that financial aid, so that's important also. Okay, so that's part of it. So that's one of 529 plan. We'll talk more about that. If you
Can we set that up for a grandchild?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can set up for a grandchild also. We're going to talk about some benefits with that also.
Sweet. Okay. Here we go.
Next one, a traditional IRA, which is mostly something you put away for your retirement, right? The good thing about, like I said, traditional IRA, it's taxable contribution. So whatever money you contribute towards it, and we talked about a couple episodes back, is tax deductible, which is good, right? So you can deduct it on your taxes. And it's also a tax-free growth. That means the interest you're earning on the investment, you don't pay no taxes on it, but you pay tax on distribution. That means when you retire, you pay taxes on it, right? And also it allows you to take penalty-free withdrawals for education expenses. So if you have your own IRA, for example, you can use that, okay? You can use that and pay no penalties, right? Penalties as long as you for your kids' education.
I like that. Penalty-free withdrawals.
Exactly.
Good.
Right? Which is great. Now, Roth IRA is after tax contribution. That means you already got tax and you're just funding it. There's no, you can't deduct it on your taxes, right? But it's also tax-free growth. And also when you take the money out, it's also tax-free. Okay. Traditionally, you're going to pay taxes when you take the money out. Roth IRA, you pay zero tax when you take the money out. Okay. And also allows you the same option, penalty-free withdrawal for education expenses for you, your spouse, your child, or your grandchild. Okay. The good thing about the account is also parental owned. So that means pretty much the parents, because it's your IRA, it's your retirement plan. Okay?
Yeah, like you said earlier, it's owner driven.
Yes, it's owner driven. Okay. It's your own retirement plan. And also the good thing about the retirement, that doesn't count for any, how can I say, it doesn't count for any financial aid. It doesn't impact at all. So Roth IRA does. So there's a lot of people, they fund their Roth IRA to use it for kids' education, right? So in other words, rather than having sometimes an option, rather than putting money in a kid's name, they max out an IRA, right? And they're able to use that. Number one, it doesn't count for it doesn't affect financial aid. And on top of that, it doesn't, if let's say if a child decide not to go to college, for example, that's your retirement.
Got you.
So there's ways you can actually do that to fund for their retirement. And everybody's different. We're going to talk more about that also. Let's look at the next one. The next one is a Uniform Gift to Minor Act, right? Uniform Transfer Minor Act, right?
UGMA,
right? The good thing about there's higher balances. The good thing about the UGMA and UTMA, you can put as much as money you want a year. Right, a lot of these other accounts we're gonna talk about, like 529, there's a limit that, like just like a Roth IRA, you can only put 7,000 a year in it, right? And also, it's also 18,000 a year also for the 529, right? But the UGMA, you can put as much money as possible, but that's which is good. So if you can able to overfund, put as much as possible. But the challenge with that is it's not tax deferred. That means the interest you earned on that money, right? The interest you earn on that money is tax. You're gonna get taxed on it. Okay, so you're gonna get paid capital gains tax on the interest you earn on that money. Okay, which is which is could be a challenge, which of along it could affect how much you have. You make a huge difference. Also,
Right.
it's account control. And that means, for example, you set it up and you put the child as a beneficiary, right? But as soon as the child turns 18, it becomes their money. Legally, you have no rights to it. So what does that actually mean? That means if they want to take the money and buy a car, you can't stop them.
They want to go on a trip.
On vacation, you can't stop them. So as soon as 18 versus a 529, you still own it, right? So there's benefit. You can put as much, but let's say the challenge that people have, they concern with the 529, those plans. So they say, what if my child doesn't go to college? What happens? And so 529 gives you, the UGMA gives you a different option, but you have to accept that when the child's 18, they own it.
Yeah. Wow, that's an interesting one.
Yes. And also it counts. So financial aid, so it's considered part of the child's money. So it can affect.
Yeah. Eileen said that's why the kids don't need to know any of this part.
Exactly, right? But they can affect that. So if you look at now, there's a Coverdale. Coverdale is another, it looks like it's like a 529, but there's limit. There's tax-free growth, but only $2,000 max. You can only put $2,000 maximum contribution in a Coverdale. Okay. That's the most you can put in it, right? And also it remains on parents' control until the beneficiary turns 30 years old. Then they take it over. Okay. So it gives you low limits, and also it affects, again, doesn't affect that much to get financial aid. It doesn't affect the ability to get financial aid on top of that, right? So those are the 5 different ones, and we'll talk more of the 529, which we'll talk about real quick. So
yeah, because that's the one that's calling more my attention than the other ones.
Exactly, 529, right? So what is a 529, right? And also one thing the 529 offers you a lot, right? There's a lot of estate benefits of 529 also, right? So let's take a look at it. See, a 529, you can put up to $18,000 a year, right, per person, and $36,000 for a married couple per beneficiary without triggering any gift tax. Wow. So you can actually transfer money. So there's a lot of people to avoid, they start transferring money in a 529 plan for their kids to avoid any gift tax. Okay. That's a good thing, right? And also there's special gift, and there's accelerated gifting, right, which allows someone to put $90,000, right, for a married couple, of $90,000 for individual, $108,000 for married couple in a lump sum. So you're able to put a big lump sum of money for the kids, right? So if someone's fortunate they have that amount of money, they can actually do that. It makes a big difference, right? For tax purposes, there's benefits to it also. And there's tax-free withdrawal, right? For example, the 529, you can money's tax deferred and also tax-free as long as used for college, which is great, right? Education. And also the good thing, control. So the couple, you still control. So you're able to gift it, but you still control of the account assets, right? Yes. And you're allowed to make beneficiary changes. So you cannot transfer. If you have several kids, you can transfer from one child to another child. You're able to make that transfer, right? Which is great. And that's one of the benefits of doing that also. So you're able to have more flexibility. And one thing that came out this year, which is part of they allowed you, check this out, came out, you can transfer. So let's say one of the concerns that people had, they said, well, what if my child doesn't go to college? What happens to the money? So guess what? They allow you to transfer up to $35,000 to a Roth IRA.
That's amazing.
Right? So they came out a law last year that you can transfer to their Roth IRA. So you have little Johnny doesn't want to go to college, and you have $35,000 or more set for his education. Guess what? You can transfer up to $35,000, right? And he can transfer separate Roth IRA for little Johnny, right? And transfer to his Roth IRA. So this way he can use the money for his retirement and be able to use the benefits of having a Roth IRA also, right?
Yeah. Come on, little Johnny, go to college.
Go to college anyway, right? Which is important. And there's so many things. I didn't want to wear people out with so many things. Like one thing, why is it so important, right? Check this out. I was looking at it, and I'm gonna go over with you. It's like some people say, what's the difference between planning early, right, versus waiting, like most people get a student loan and let me share with you. So let's say, for example, average college for 4 years, that's would cost like 200,000 for it. Let's use 200,000 for 4 years of school, right? And let's say you have a newborn, right? And you want to save money. If you put away, check this out. If you put away 300, let's say $350 a month, for example, right? That can pay for the college education that can pay the college education for your child, right?
Wow.
For your child for the 4 years, just put $350 a month, which if you look at it, that's about less than $100 a week, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's for some people might be a challenge, but it tells you a different. Now, if you waited, let's say if you waited, so you know what, I'm not gonna put aside, and I'm gonna, let's say, get a student loan. Wait to get a student loan, right? Check this out. To actually be able to borrow 148,000, right? With interest, if you look at 6 to 8% interest, if you took 20 years to pay it off, right? Even if it's in deferment, you're gonna end up paying the payment is gonna be about $1,300 a month.
Dude.
$1,300 a month, right? And on top of it, it'll cost you $280,000 in interest total cost.
That's crazy, but so many people are doing that.
They're doing that, so that's why it's better off to start early.
Yeah.
It's really, if you start early, even if kids are young, even no matter how old, just start something with them, right? It makes a huge difference, which is so important. So if you look at the next slide, and we don't want to go, but we just want to give people have an idea. If you look at the next slide now, right?
That was the last one I have.
That's the last one we did, yeah. So let's look at the next one.
There isn't a next one. That's the last one.
That's it. Okay, that's it, pretty much, right? So those are the things that are so important.
Yeah.
When planning for the kids' education, the key is to start as early as possible.
Yeah.
As early as possible. The earliest you start, the better off you're gonna be. It's costing more and more, and I've seen so many kids out there, tragic. And the sad part about that is, and here's what I tell kids, and it's gonna sound very, very controversial, but I'm just gonna be very direct. Is I know college, everybody wants their kids, and we want all our kids to go to college, but at this point, it costs so much money. I remember when I went to school, when I was going to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. You understand? I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I went to school to figure out what I wanted to do. So you have to go to college to figure out what you're going to do. But it was only $3,000 a semester. If you went to a state university, like I was in New York, like a Sunday school was $1,500 a semester. It was a lot less. Mm-hmm. $1,500 semester. So at that point in time, it wasn't a big challenge to figure it out. But now, I tell kids, listen, unless you know what you're gonna, don't go waste 30, 40, 50,000 to figure out what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And some parents may not like what I'm saying, but it's not good for the kids, not good for you financially, and it's not good to be able to, let's say we're gonna, all right, Joe, to go to school. I don't know what I want to do, but I'm going to go to school because I'm supposed to do that. And I'm going to end up paying $40,000 a year to figure out and if you decide, because let me tell you about student loan debt. It doesn't go away.
It doesn't go
away. You can't file bankruptcy and get rid of it.
On it. That's true.
You can't do it.
You can't. Let me tell you, I was a bankruptcy paralegal for 15 years. And that was one of the things everybody would say, well, I have student loans. That is not dischargeable in bankruptcy.
Yes, it's not. It's not going to discharge. And that's why don't just go to figure out what you're going to do, because you can't get rid of it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the generation now, the Gen Zs, millennials, they know that when we were buying houses and when we were buying cars and when we were going to college, life was much cheaper.
Exactly.
They look at us like, wait a minute, Mom, how did you stay home to raise us? Yes. Like, I'm stuck working for the rest of my life. And hopefully my spouse, whenever I get married, is going to have to work too, because we can't make it. So they already don't want to go to college because they know it's so expensive.
It's so expensive. Yeah. And it's the truth. So that's one thing I always recommend when someone, I want to go to college, I'm like, do you know what they're going to do? Are they clear exactly what they're going to do? Right. Yeah. And the challenge, and most people that go to college and do something totally different that they study for. 70-80% of people that they go even to get a degree, and most people, they do something totally different than what they study for. So
yeah, my son has a degree hanging up, and he is not even remotely doing what the degree says that's up on the wall.
Exactly. Now, if you got a scholarship or you're able to get some financial aid, get some grants, or something like that, then great. But if you're gonna have to, yes,
Can you start a 529 on a
absolutely,
3-month-old?
absolutely. You can definitely start as long as they're born. They have a social security number or something like that. They can definitely start a college fund. The
Good.
earlier the better. But there's also a sequence I always tell parents when you're building your financial house. Okay, here's one thing I tell parents: make sure. Sounds controversial again. Make sure you fund before you start putting money for the kids' education. Make sure you max out your Roth IRA alls first. Okay?
Ooh, okay.
Make sure you take care of that first. Why?
Max
Why
it.
is that? And it sounds very kind of contradictory, right? Because why? Let's say if you're 30 or 40, right? You have kids, you plan for the kids, you put money in kids' education, right? So guess what's gonna happen? Let's say if you decide to you know what, I'm gonna put $300, $400, $500 a month for my kids' education, but I'm not gonna put money for myself, right? Guess what happens? The kids are 18, 20, they have time to recover. You don't have any time to recover. What's the first thing to tell you when you get on a flight, right? What's the first thing to tell when they send that video, right? They put that video on, and when no one pays attention anyway, right? What the stewardess or the flight attendant, let's just flight attendant, and they go over to first thing they tell you is before you put a mask on somebody else, put a mask on you first, then on somebody else. So it's the same thing. Make sure you put money for your retirement first, right? And whatever you have left, put aside for the kids' education.
So good. So good. I totally agree, says Mel. She says, get certified or licensed in a trade before spending money on higher education.
Figure out if you know, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an accountant, I want to do this, and you know clearly that's your passion, you want to do it, then and you know that's what you want to do, by all means go for it. But if you can get a degree in basket weaving or art literature or something like that, you know, which is nothing wrong with that, but and you're gonna you don't know what you and
it's wild, isn't it?
You have to think twice about it. You really have to think twice about that. If you get a scholarship, financial aid, that's different. But if you have to, it's challenging. It's just too much out there. So many kids out there, I see, Liz, they're coming out with school and they start out with, I knew, check this out. I knew a teacher that went to law school. She went to law school. She had $150,000 in student loan debt. And Damon practiced. She didn't like law. She went to law school. Damon wanted to do law. She became a teacher. She was making $40,000 a year, and she still had $150,000 in debt.
Wow, that's so crazy.
So it's like buying a house or buying a car you don't even live in.
You don't even use. Yeah. You don't even use it.
You have that, and you're paying for it, and it doesn't go away, guys. It doesn't go away. You can't bankrupt it. You can't. It'll follow you until the day you die, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's sad. Okay. Wow, this was amazing. Amazing. ABCs on saving for education.
Yes.
So good. Absolutely. Guys, you do know that you can contact Bernard for any of your questions regarding any of these episodes at bealerte@gmail.com. Send him an email, ask questions. For those that are watching, the replay, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, connect and get your questions answered. This is just so full of so much knowledge. Thank you, Bernard.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. We're excited. Next week, we're back on. I think we should be so much better next week. So we're going to go back on and we're going to talk about how money works for kids and parents, different tips. And we're going to have different ages. Like if someone between 3 to 5, what are some things you can do to help them be money conscious? And 5 teenagers, and it's never too early. It's never too early to start. It's never too early to start. Guess because you know why? Financial companies are preying after kids.
Yes,
preying after teenagers. Sometimes I remember went to college. Right, I got my first credit card. I was barely turned 18. I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh my God, they give me a free hat, a free duffel bag, right? Free hat. Apply for this. And I had $3,000 and I was like, oh, I didn't think I had to pay it back.
Yeah. That's why.
that's free money, and I'll charge you. I didn't think I had to pay it back until like, yeah, you got to pay it back, and 25% interest. So, and we have to equip our kids with the right thing. We have to, it's never too early. So there's things that they can learn early enough that they can use, and always, it's never, because listen, it's the world. The world is attacking now. That the financial companies are find a way to. They want to create people in debt for their life.
Yes. But we have a coach.
Yes.
But we have a coach, someone to help us and assist. And Derwin says, always full of great knowledge and great information here on the Army Empire podcast. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Those that have watched on Facebook, those that I see have logged on throughout these 30 minutes on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you again next week. So join us.
We'll see you guys. Very excited.
Bye, guys. Bye, Bernard. See you soon.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Army Empire podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Join us next week for another exciting edition, and until then, keep building your empire.